Welcome to Rat Salad Review. Today I'm here with Ed Gage. What's going on, Ed Gage?
Not much. Just another day, I guess.
Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a very interesting story. You moved, where are you actually from originally? Because you moved from wherever you were from and moved to LA. So where are you from originally?
Long story short, I was born in South Florida, and then I moved to Buffalo, New York when I was just about to turn 5 years old.
Uh,
I lived there for 17 years, hated it. Well, just because of the weather. I mean, like
yeah,
I didn't,
the
I,
snow
I just
probably
hated.
sucks up there.
Yeah, yeah, it was just the weather, and then I relocated to South Florida when I was 21 to transfer to Florida Atlantic University, where I studied film and I got my bachelor's degree in film
Uh,
while I was there. And then while I was after I graduated, I took a leap of faith and I moved to LA, and that'll be 6 years this coming June, and the rest is history.
wow, that's pretty cool. Were you kind of nervous about going out to LA? Because that's, a huge different scene from where you've been.
I'd say yes and no, to be honest. Like, I mean, I was not nervous because I'm always somebody that's, never to try something new. I mean, I can be stubborn with certain things,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I think, like when my friend had said to me, dude, come with me to LA in the summer, give it a try, and if you like it, stay, I mean, and I thought, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? And I remember because when I was living in Florida, I was friends with a lot of the guys in Yngwie Malmsteen's crew,
oh wow.
and Kenny Baker. He's not working with Yngwie anymore, but he was the guitar tech and manager for Yngwie for almost 10 years.
Mm.
I had said to him, "What do you think about me going to LA?" And he's like, "You know what, dude? Give it a shot. I mean, you never know until you try it, and if you don't try it, you'll have that what if in the back of your mind the rest of your life." And I'm really glad I took his advice.
Right, right. Yeah, I actually have a friend that actually hitchhiked from New York all the way to California.
Really?
Yeah, because
Oh
he
my
wanted to be a
God.
musician. He actually probably, I think he still is a musician, but he really wanted to get into it and really wanted to go out to LA because the New York scene's kind of crappy at the time, and LA is the place to be, I guess. So he tried it too, but he
Yeah.
ended up coming back here anyway. So I don't think it went very well for him.
I mean, some people it's hit or miss, but I think it's been said if you're at least in LA for at least a good 7 years and you've done quite a bit, I'd say you can at least say that you made it. I mean, because if you manage to last that long, that says a lot. Because some people they'll come out here for like a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they'll be gone after that. Like I've seen
Right.
people move away, and it's sad. Or even people but then again, even people that I have gotten to meet out here that have lived here a long time, they've been moving to either if it's Florida, they've moved to like Texas or Arizona or Vegas or anywhere else.
Mm.
Like it's
Nope. Computer froze again. Hmm.
really blessed with being surrounded with good people.
The thing froze. Zoom froze for a second.
Oh, all good. Um, I'm trying to play back what I said. Yeah, yeah, LA is one of those places. It can make you or break you, but I think the one thing, if somebody were to ask me advice, the best way to, to like, best piece of advice I can give is to surround yourself with good people, because
Right.
there's people in LA that'll use you. There's
Mm.
people that'll want to like see you fail and that watch you stumble, and then they'll either, or the worst, they'll take advantage of you. They'll use you for your resources, and then once the second that they see that you're no longer of use to them, they'll drop you just like that. That's
Right.
how it is. But luckily, I've been blessed, with being surrounded with some really great people out here, and I continue to do so. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I see the list of people that you've been working with. The last person you worked with was Steve Grimmett from Grim Reaper. How did
Mhm.
you get to know him? Unfortunately, he passed away. What was that, last year? Right?
Yeah, yeah, and it was really sad because I remember I was visiting New York when he passed away, and I had just gotten out of the movie theater. Well, I was visiting my brother, my family out there, and I think I had just gotten out of the movie theater. My brother and I had saw a movie, and I just like it was literally just as like the news started coming out, and I think I believe I think it was Abaddon of Venom Inc. that had
No.
posted about it. It was either Abaddon or Mantis, one of them. Like we're friends on Facebook. Like one of them had posted about it, and I said, "Please tell me that this is a joke." And then they posted a screenshot, I think, from Steve's brother's Facebook, and then word just started getting around and around, and I didn't know how to take it, man, because Steve and I, even though like I didn't have the pleasure of knowing him as long as most people did, but I'm very grateful that I had a friendship with him. And how that happened, so how the friendship started, like originally we were just friends on Facebook. I was just a fan, and then he started like liking my posts and like my endeavors in LA and all that. And then we would just like, chat here and there on social media. And then when he played at the Whiskey A Go Go in 2018, I believe, and then I went up to him and he said, "Hey, Mike, do I know you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm Ed Gage. We're friends on Facebook." He's like, "Oh yeah, Ed, I remember you." And he's such a sweet, very wonderful, humble guy. And he's one of those people. He loved every second that he had with his fans. And it's very rare to see musicians that were very much like him. That just he didn't I don't think the term "forgot where he came from" is the right term, but he counted his blessings, and he never took his fans for granted. He always treated his fans like they were his friends or like his family, and that's what I really admired about him. He was such like a very wonderful guy, and I had met him after he unfortunately had the amputation,
Right.
because I think about a couple years before that was when that happened, and I remember he was making jokes about the prosthetic leg he had and all that on stage. And, just see that he still went out on the road and he still toured no matter what and gave it his 150%. I really tremendously respected the hell out of that. Yeah. But yeah, aside from being a hardworking musician, just a very outstanding, humble guy. And so we stayed in touch through social media, and we were supposed to, I remember I wanted to meet up with him when he was in town in late 2019 before the shutdown. But I ended up, I think I had to do a commercial for Gucci Eyewear, actually, where I was a heavy metal musician in the commercial.
Oh, really?
which was pretty cool. And so I didn't get a chance to meet with him because it was a night shoot actually at where Amoeba Records used to be in Hollywood.
Right.
It's a really cool, where Amoeba Records used to be. It looked very amazing. They had like 2 floors. They had the first floor, which was all music and vinyl, and the second floor, which was like all movies, like VHS, DVDs, Blu-rays, and all that.
Oh, right.
But anyways, and then I think I was supposed to see Steve again in Santa Ana, but then COVID happened, actually. So that eventually led to, I think like during the shutdown, obviously a lot of us had nothing to do. So I was just, mixing some other previously unreleased material that I had, which was for my EP that I put out almost 2 years ago, Moth to the Flame. And what happened, but anyways, I just thought to myself, I've always been a huge AC/DC fan, and, Dirty Deeds, if it would be such an amazing song to cover. But honestly, I wouldn't want to just do it just me. I think I'd have to get some other great people involved. So I already knew that if I told my bandmates out of Buffalo, Derek Sedota and Nick Moran, they're my guitarist and drummer. I asked them, "Hey, would you guys want to do a recording and all that?" And I remember for a little bit, I kept it hidden from them. I wanted to surprise them that, Steve Grimmett and John Gallagher were going to be involved. So they really liked that surprise, which was great. And then I ended up approaching Steve and I said, "Would you be interested?" Since I know a lot of us don't have much to do at the moment, because we recorded it in 2020 and then released it digitally in February 2021. Right. And so what happened was, I then, like Steve said, he was down for it. He was interested. And then I approached John Gallagher saying, "Hey, John, would you want to play bass and maybe do some backup vocals and do that Angus scream at the end?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And I told him Steve was involved already as it was. And so, yeah, to have like two, greats from the new wave of British heavy metal movement involved was just amazing because it was a genre that I really loved growing up. Like I grew up with like all the bands like, like Saxon, Raven, Grim Reaper, Praying Mantis, Venom, Iron Maiden, and even, like all those bands that, because they were of huge impact on the heavy metal movement, which eventually influenced the thrash metal movement.
Right, right.
And so to have like just even like Steve and John involved in this was amazing. And then we just did like a little music video of it too. Like obviously we all recorded in different locations. Derek and Nick recorded in Buffalo, and then John and Steve recorded where they were at in the UK, and then we just did like filmed ourselves where we were.
Yeah.
Just for a music video. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be like a big budget music video thing. We just recorded on our phones and all that, just to like have that. And then I added some like really cool like lighting effects to it as well. And then Mario, like Jordan is the one. Jordan Kucharski was the one who did the filming for Derek and Nick, and then on like a very high quality camera. And then me, Steve, and John, we just recorded on our phones.
Yeah.
And then my friend from Florida Atlantic University, actually, who is also a fellow film major, Mario Benessi, he did the video editing for it. And I just said, just maybe put like a VHS filter on it to give it some nostalgia. So yeah, and then unfortunately, when it came to Steve's passing, I remember Steve was scheduled to perform in LA with Tim Ripper Owens and who else?
The Three Tremors.
Yeah, Three Tremors, and then Sean Peck was scheduled for it too, and then also
Harry Conklin from Jack Panzer. Yep.
Yeah, Harry as well. And I remember like they were all scheduled to perform this, and unfortunately, I guess the universe had other plans because Steve, actually, I had said to him, it'll be great to see you and all that. And he said, yeah, it would be great to see you too. Maybe you could come up on stage and sing See You in Hell with me. And I was like, that would be amazing. And to have him even ask me do that, I think when I read that, it was a bit of a tearjerker for me because it was I never thought that like a musician that I grew up listening to would ask me to come on stage to do that. I mean, unfortunately, it didn't.
Yeah.
But like that's what I liked about Steve is that, I think he was one of those people, he was always willing to give people a chance, and and not many musicians, like I said, not many musicians really had the personality that Steve had. Right. And so I still attended that show, like with Ripper and Sean, and that's Steve performing. And it was great to at least see Tim. I've always been a huge fan of Tim's work, so that was really cool to see. And, I liked what he did with Judas Priest, even though I feel that, what Ripper did was very underappreciated for that era of Priest.
Yeah.
And I feel that he deserves a lot more recognition for what he did. But anyways, yeah, so I had then posted about Steve's passing on social media since, he really meant a lot to me in some way, even though I didn't get to know him as much as most people did. But just to even have a recording was, a recording with him, that'll be something that'll stick with me for life.
Yeah, of course.
And so when I posted about that, an independent label had hit me up out of Seattle, PIG Records, even though their primary genre was punk, but they're not limited to other genres like heavy metal and all that. And the founder of the guy who runs the label, David, he reached out to me and said that he was a huge Grim Reaper fan and he loved the cover and all that, and said we would like to do maybe a limited edition lath cut vinyl release of this if you'd be interested. I'm like, sure, yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. And because to say that, even if you just can say that you collaborated with a label, you at least worked through a label and had a release through a label, that counts as something. Some people can't even. It's difficult to get even with an independent label on that matter. So this was something, and I think that Steve would be proud that I did this. I mean, at least I hope he is.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm a pretty decent fan of Grim Reaper. I actually, the first time I ever heard of Grim Reaper, which probably a lot of people did, was Beavis and Butthead.
As most people did, but for me, actually, it was a movie called CKY, which was the movies that Bam Margera of
Right,
Jackass
right.
had
Yep, yep.
before he released like these homemade videos where he and his friends would do stupid shit and all that. And I remember the song "See You in Hell" had played in the background of where Bam Margera and friends were digging a hole in their backyard so his dad would drive his lawnmower into
Yes,
it.
yep.
And I remember the song playing in the background. It was so catchy. I think I first heard this in like 2002, 2003, and I'm like, oh, this song is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like, who is this? And I remember, what was it? And I just like heard the song, like, "See You in Hell, my friend." And I was just like, this is awesome. And I'm like, who is this? So I looked it up on, I think this is like when like AOL, like the program was like still a thing for the internet. Before like everybody was using like Internet Explorer and Firefox and Safari and
Right.
all that. But I remember I then got hooked on Grim Reaper after that. I was already in my becoming a musician at the time. I was already learning guitar, and I remember at that point, like I was discovering a lot of bands that like Grim Reaper on that manner, and so yeah, I have to thank Bam Margera for that, and Jackass, too. It was
Right.
like Jackass had like a phenomenal Jackass and CKY. They had a phenomenal soundtrack,
Yeah.
like with all these bands. Obviously, all these bands. I think that Bam and like all the other guys were influenced by.
So you went to California, Los Angeles in 2017, and you got into film and all that, and then you've been on the Mandalorian, Westworld, Hunters. Tell me about that. That's pretty awesome.
Westworld was one of my very first gigs in Hollywood, as a matter of fact, and I was like working on small budget stuff too at the time, just to get some real footage to showcase my acting. But like Westworld, I remember I got booked on that because of my long hair, actually.
All right.
So cool, because what happened was I remember I got a call from the casting director that was involved because I didn't have my own agent at the time. I was actually self booking myself before I got like it took me 4 years in LA to get an agent, as a matter of
Wow.
fact. So what happened was the casting director had called me up and he said, "Hey, is this Ed?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, speaking. Who's this?" And he said, "This is so and so. I'm doing the bookings for Westworld, and we're doing like a very huge shootout battle scene, and they need some guys with long hair that have some like some like some kind of tactical experience." And so they had said, "Do you have any experience with firearms?" I said, "Yes, I do. I come from a family background in the military, as a matter of fact." And so like they said, "Do you still have your facial hair?" I'm like, no, I just shaved it for a gig, as a matter of fact." Like, "Oh, no problem. But do you still have your long hair?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." They're like, "Okay, don't cut. Whatever you do, don't cut your hair." I'm like, "Okay, no problem."
Yeah.
So I remember I got booked on like a week and a half worth of a gig, and it paid very well too. And I remember some of us were firing blanks, some of us just had rubber guns. And at first they gave me a rubber gun, but then I had to replace somebody that didn't show up. And the director of the episode handpicked me and said, we need you." I'm like, "Okay." Like I was like I randomly out of nowhere, they just announced, "We need all the Confederado soldiers with long hair." And like I'm literally like the last one, just casually walking in, and the director sees me walking, and he's just like, "We need you." I'm like, "Okay."
Mhm.
And he's like, "Have you ever fired a weapon before?" I'm like, "Yes, sir. I come from a family background in military and law enforcement and all that." And so they're like, "Have you ever fired blanks?" I'm like, "Blanks, no. Live rounds, yes." So like they said, "Okay, yeah, then we're just gonna put you through a quick safety training meeting real quick, and then we're gonna get forward with shooting the scene." I'm like, "Okay." And so they were very particular. Like the armorer had said to me, they're like, "Okay, so you fire out in this area right here where there's nobody at." Because like when they do like shootout scenes with blanks, they're firing at absolutely nothing. Or if there's somebody in the shot and they need to make it look like somebody gets shot, they're never aiming it directly at somebody. You always have to aim it to the side. Like all those stunt shows you see, whether if it's like Waterworld or like when they had the Miami Vice stunt show at Universal Studios Hollywood, or like even like Terminator 2 3D, and they would use blanks. They never aimed the gun directly at the actor. They was always to the side, because even with blanks, shrapnel still comes out.
Right.
But even like then, even with blanks, you always have to treat it as if it's a live firearm.
Somebody should have told Alec Baldwin that a few months ago.
Yeah, and believe me, I've had some words about that incident. Long story short, that incident could have been completely avoided,
Oh, yeah.
especially after what happened to Brandon Lee.
Right,
So
right. I think people would have learned from that, you know?
yeah, exactly. And so what happened was I was just shooting. We were pretty much just firing at absolutely nothing. And then before we were about to do the scene, the armor had said to me, "Okay, you're gonna shoot out there, and you're gonna once they yell cut, you put the gun up against the wall and you do not touch it." I'm like, "Yes, no problem." But this is the thing: when the armorer tells you something, or even the director, always do it. Don't
Yeah.
ever question. Especially when it comes to things like that, you don't ever try to make any exceptions or try to do anything your way. Because especially when it comes to situations like that, safety is an important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. God
So
forbid anything happens. It's on you. So
yeah. So what happened was, but at the same time, I got formally introduced to James Marsden because we were in the same shot together. And James, I was a huge fan of the X-Men growing up, and so getting to work with Cyclops, I thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. And I got formally introduced to him. He introduced himself to me, and then he said, "This is what's going to happen. I'm going to come up behind you. I'm going to tap you on the shoulder, and you're going to move next to me. And when I start firing is when you're going to start firing." I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." He's like, "If you have any questions, just don't hesitate to ask me." I'm like, "Okay." And it was a very fun shoot. I remember it was a week and a half long of a whole shootout scene because they needed me in other parts of the scene too, especially when we were all held up at gunpoint until he let us go. But it was a very fun shoot, and I met some great people out of it. And I met my drummer from Steel Witch. He actually just moved back to Italy, though. Steel Witch is my LA band, actually.
okay.
But and then so Westworld, like when I got my piece of footage out of that, like of me firing the uh the rifle, I was like, fuck yes. Like I remember people were like messaging me, like even friends from back home, like were sending me like this shot of me like turning around and like shooting, and they were like, big screen.
Wow, that's cool.
It was such a surreal feeling to finally see that. And there's a story, I'll get to that, that led me to the writing of a Moth to the Flame, my EP.
Right.
But the story of Mandalorian was in late 2018. I had auditioned for a commercial, and I was supposed to be a musician in it that was going to perform guitar in it. And I was at the top, like I got a call back for the audition and all that. But then they called me up, and I thought this was going to be like the good news that I got the commercial. And then they said to me, "We like what you did. You've got a great falsetto voice with great guitar playing, but we're going with somebody else." I was like,
Ugh.
"Oh." They're like, "But I just wanted to call and tell you we really appreciate you coming in and auditioning and all that." I'm like, "Okay, no problem." But I was just like, "Damn, that sucks." Because it was like an international commercial too.
Oh, really?
And so the point of it is, when one door closes, another one opens. So one of the casting companies that I was registered under, they contacted me like after I had submitted for one of their gigs, and they said that they needed farmer types and for a costume fitting in late December 2018, working all throughout January 2019 for multiple shoot days, paying very well too.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, I look like a farmer and I could use the money. So I had no idea what I was signing up for. Like they were very secretive about it. They had a code name. So they said, "You are booked on the show Huckleberry, shooting, shooting these dates, and your costume fitting will be this." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I showed up to Manhattan Beach Studios in Manhattan Beach, California. And right when I go into the studio, I see Lucasfilm on the side of the truck. And I was like, no fucking way. I was like, so I thought it was either one, Star Wars related, or two, Indiana Jones related.
Right.
So I go in, and they actually had to take my phone. Like they were very secretive about this show. Like they didn't want anything leaked. And because, there was always that one person that ruins it for everybody else.
Right,
That's
right,
why they started taking people's phones. Unless you were like the high up people there, like they trusted you more.
Right.
So I remember I then go in for my fitting, and I see all the lineup of costumes in the costume department, and it's all like Star Wars looking armor. I'm like, holy shit. And they say, the costume people, they're like, "You know what this is for, right?" I'm like, I've got a hint. I've got an idea. They're like, "This is for a new Star Wars TV series that's in the works for Disney's new streaming platform. And this was before Disney Plus was like even
Right.
announced.
Right.
So I go in and like they had to fit me in a wetsuit because some scenes we had to like stand in water and all that. Like
Really?
which it was in January too we were filming, so it was like luckily they had to heat up the water too.
Hmm.
But I remember like they fit me in my costume and all that, and then at my costume fitting I had met Carl Weathers, and I was like, "You're Carl Weathers?" He's like, "Yes, I am." I'm like, "I'm a huge fan of your work. I grew up watching you in Rocky, Predator, and Action Jackson." And when I told him Action Jackson, because not many people I think give him enough credit for that movie, he was like, "My man," and he smiled and he gave me the firmest handshake ever. And he said, "So are you involved with the show?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm working on episode 4 apparently." He's like, "Oh, I'm not in that one, but you're gonna have a blast. The show has been great so far." I'm like,
Wow.
"Looking forward to it." And he's like, "Well, hopefully we'll work on a set together one day." He's like, "You never know." And I'm like, and then we kind of went our separate ways. I couldn't get a picture because of the whole phone policy and all that, but it was a very cool experience because I grew up with a lot of the action movies and all that.
Yeah.
That's kind of what inspired me to want to get into acting too. And so working on The Mandalorian was so much fun. I mean, I made a lot of great friends out of it. I made some great connections, and even just getting to work with Gina Carano and and even like the two guys that played the Mandalorian in the suit were mainly Lateef Crowder doing all the martial arts work and stunts, and Brendan Wayne, John Wayne's grandson, who was doing all the gunslinging stuff and a lot of the body acting.
Wow.
Pedro Pascal was mostly just doing voiceover work for the character, and unless if he was unmasked for the scene. And so what happened was we had to do like a huge battle scene and all that stuff. And when I got like footage of me shooting a blaster, that was all I was waiting for when the release came out. But like I think the one piece of footage that wound up on the cutting room floor I wish would have made it out was in the beginning of the episode. We're getting shot at by like the ATST. It's that big thing that walks on 2 legs. There was a shot where I fell into the water where one of the explosion charges was. And I wasn't acting. I was literally panicking getting out of there. No. And the guy who did all the explosion effects, like he purposely blew it up behind me. And I could just feel the explosion happening behind me. And I watched the playback footage and I see it and I said, if they don't use this, I'll be really fucking pissed. They didn't use it, but I'm not mad at the end of the day. I still got some great footage with the shooting a blaster that I used towards, feature footage and all that.
Yeah. And so you're still in the show. So did you wear a mask or you have your face and you actually know who you are?
My face is shown. People
I haven't watched the show yet. I watched like one episode, but I have to watch it.
Yeah, I was clean shaved and I had like hair extensions that went down to here. They put like these like braids, like they like inserted these braids into my hair and all that. And it was really cool because I remember one morning we would have early morning call times at like 5 a.m. So a lot of us were like half asleep. But I remember my makeup artist was a guy named Chris Nelson who did a lot of the special effects for the newest Halloween movies.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't recognize him. And Chris Nelson was also one of the cops that gets killed in Halloween 2018. And what happened was, I remember like I had said to him, yeah, like I'm a big horror fan and all that. He's like, oh, I did makeup effects on the new Halloween. I'm like, oh, really? Like I knew who he was, but I didn't recognize him because I was so half asleep. And I remember in 2021, my wife and I went to like an outdoor like little convention event that they were doing in South Pasadena where they shot Halloween, the original. And they had it like right behind where the Myers house is actually placed at. Wow. And like PJ Souls, who's also a good friend of mine, she's one of the stars from Halloween. She like was there and all that. But anyways, Chris was there and I said, hey, Chris, did you do makeup for The Mandalorian by any chance? He's like, yes, I did. I'm like, you did my makeup. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I was half asleep when you did it. I'm sorry. I didn't even put the two together. He's like, no, dude, it's all good. We were all tired. So.
I'm surprised I didn't recognize you.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes like I look different. I'll have like my hair down or I'll have it up or I'll have facial hair. My look changes a lot. So some people, they'll be like, Ed? And they'll be like, yeah, yeah. They're like, oh, I almost didn't recognize you.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, it was a lot of fun, and like the shoot was just an absolute blast. The food was great too, of course.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine.
Even like working with Gina Carano, such a sweetheart. And I mean, even though despite the whole stuff that happened in the media and all that, all I can say is, she was nothing but kind, professional, very outgoing, and very friendly on set. And she didn't treat anybody like, like that, like she was better than anybody. She treated everybody like an equal. And, that's what I really liked about it. And like we
Mhm.
were having like conversations about martial arts and all that. Because even though I hadn't gotten involved in the martial arts yet, I was still a fan of martial arts films and all that. So I was asking her about her professional fighting career and all that too.
Mm.
And it was a lot of fun. But and then as for Hunters, Hunters was like, pretty much the same thing. I got called in because they needed my particular look for it, and I got to get killed by Josh Radnor on camera, which is pretty cool.
No, that's cool.
So far, my biggest lead role I've had was a music video for the rap group Cypress Hill.
Oh, really?
And how that happened was kind of like similar thing. Well, I actually I did the Cypress Hill music video before I did the Mandalorian.
Mm.
And I remember summer 2018 towards the end, like I was just having a really bad summer. It wasn't going well. Like a lot of personal problems were going on. But anyways, I always think of it like this, going through hardships, suck at times, but you know what? When you go through some hardships, something good can come right out of it, or something, good is going to happen immediately after. And that's what I like to believe in. And so I remember since I was, like I said, I didn't have an agent at the time. So I was self-submitting myself for work like crazy through all like the, role submission programs that I was a part of, like Actors Access, casting networks, all these things. And that's how I would get my work, was like being my own agent practically.
Mm.
And I remember I submitted to a submission. They said it was for a music video and they needed robbers and bystanders. So I just submit, pretty much submitted to both. And the producer had called me up and he was like, hey, is this Ed Gage? I'm like, speaking, who's this? And he's like, my name is so-and-so. I am the producer of the music video you submitted to be a robber and a bystander to. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. And he's like, the director likes your look and he wants you to be like one of the main roles in the music video. You'd be like the dispensary owner, but do you have any experience with firearms? And kind of like what I said with Westworld, I said, yeah, I have a family background in both the military and law enforcement. And they're like, okay, great. Are you available these 2 shooting days paying this much? And the pay was phenomenal too. So I couldn't say no. I'm like, yeah, it works. They're like, okay, great. We've got you locked in on this. We've pretty much have you all set. And by the way, this is actually going to be for a music video for the rap group Cypress Hill. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, thank you. Thank you for reaching out. I'm excited for it. And I was familiar with, Cypress Hill because of their hit Insane in the
Right.
Membrane.
Yeah.
And also because they appeared on the soundtrack for the movie Last Action Hero, which
Oh,
was
right.
one of my
Yeah.
favorite movies.
Yeah. Good soundtrack
So
too.
yeah, great. And so I got to do that. And I remember the first day of shooting, we didn't film much of me, but the second day was where we covered pretty much all of me. We shot some of it at B Reel's dispensary in Silmar, and then we shot some of it in like Skid Row in LA. So
Right.
it was near downtown, which was great. But like I remember the second day when we were at B Reel's dispensary, he was there that day. And we were just talking about bands and all that. And he was telling me like when he hung out with like Pantera back in the 90s and all that. And
Yeah,
so
because somehow they kind of got like mixed in with like the metal crowd a little
they
bit, I
did.
think.
Yeah, they did. Like they love metal bands. They're actually big metal fans, as a matter of fact. So
Right.
that's why they got a following with the metalheads too. So, and then a month later, a month before the music video had dropped, we all had watched a rough cut of it. And me and the director got like VIP like invitation to Cypress Hill's show at the El Rey Theater in LA. And I remember after the show was over, like we went backstage and all that, and then they all were like, "Dude, you killed it in the video. You're amazing." And I think Sendog had said to me, "You look like a young Sean Penn," and I'm like, "Oh, geez." Everybody compares me to either like a young Sean Penn or like a Bradley Cooper and all that.
Really?
Which, yeah, ironically enough, this past year I landed a role in a movie where I portrayed a very slapstick version of Sean Penn, actually, which was funny.
Oh, wow.
It was bound to happen eventually. So
Are you a fan of Sean Peck? I mean, Sean
Yeah.
Peck, Sean Penn. Got Sean Peck on my mind.
Two different people.
Yes,
I
completely
like Sean
different
Penn.
people.
No, I'm a fan of Sean Peck too. Yeah, he's great. Yeah, but like Sean Penn, yeah, like I think my first film I ever watched with him was Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Okay.
And it was funny because when I auditioned for this role, I did two things. I auditioned portraying him in an interview he did. I think it was I don't remember if it was a Conan O'Brien interview or a David Letterman interview I had watched. Because sometimes if I'm going to portray, especially like if I'm portraying somebody that actually exists, I really want to nail that character and be like them as much as possible. Kind of like how what's his name, Austin, who portrayed Elvis, he was like very into the character, or like even like how Jim Morris, like Val Kilmer was with Jim Morrison, or and all that.
What's the guy that played Freddie Mercury? I can't remember his name.
Oh, geez, how do I not know these names? I know I talk about these names a lot, and I. But yeah, so and then also, I then did a second clip to show to the director, doing Jeff Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and right then and there, like she just said, "You're hired." The director, she was in the movie Crank High Voltage with Jason Statham, as a matter of fact. And so I actually had enjoyed that movie too. So I had asked her about working with Statham and all that, and she had some really cool stories to tell. But it was a fun set getting to work with her. It was like a very slapstick comedy about it's called a movie that's going to come out called F-listers, and kind of like how like there's A-listers and B-listers, and F-listers, like it's like kind of like parroting, like not like parroting, but giving some recognition to like the smaller up and coming actors that are striving to like make ends meet and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see how that movie comes out. I got to meet John Otrin. He's an actor who was in Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, who plays the father of the main actress in the film. He also was in MASH, the TV series. He was in Missing in Action 2 with Chuck Norris. And me being a martial artist, I asked him about working with Chuck and all that, and he had a lot of great stories to tell. And so yeah, like I've done so much in my acting career, and even music too, I mean, but anyways, which reminds me, but like before I get into the topic of Moth to the Flame, there was a part I was getting at with it. Oh yeah, so I actually am considering maybe starting to write a book on this. I mean, as I've said on social media, I'm no A-lister or B-lister. I'm not playing arenas or stages, like, stadiums or anything like that. But, I've got so much that I've done in my career, especially in Hollywood. And, especially with my youth growing up, I had a very rough upbringing, with a lot of things that happened. I'd like to do a book, and I actually already have a title and name for it, called Redemption, because I could go on and on about what happened in my youth long before I went off to college and, got involved in Hollywood. But if Redemption, I want to be able to show my redemption story and to like tell people that it's never too late to turn your life around, even especially, I know kids are kids and all that, but I really nearly went down a bad path. And I probably could have used any excuse to go down a bad path, but I didn't. Right. And I made a huge turnaround for myself, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's good.
So that's why I want to write a book, about my upbringing, but then telling my Hollywood stories and like my stories in film and music and in the martial arts world too. And showing people that, hard times can definitely happen, but no matter how hard life can be, it's never too late to, make good decisions, make turnarounds and, change for the better.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to like start writing a book. And I think it's probably best I start writing it now before I start forgetting a lot of these things.
You've got to get a tape recorder and record
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. So the story of my EP, Moth to the Flame, uh, comes from when I appeared in Westworld. When the episode aired in May 2018, and I had posted about it on social media, I had people that either one, I had never heard from in my entire life, or two, people that never gave me the time of the day or never even bothered speaking to me for so long, all of a sudden reaching out and saying, asking me for favors,
Right.
asking for this and that. And now all of a sudden they're paying attention to me. And I'm like, it's like with one particular person, I was like, dude, you gave me a hard time back then and you want my help? Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know it's very blunt just saying that, but
I think it's justified though, because they're coming to you for something. And they didn't give a shit about you beforehand, so too bad.
Exactly. And it's funny you say it like that, because that's kind of what leads to the concept of Moth to the Flame.
Yeah.
So a bass player I had already befriended and became friends with, a guy named Rick Fox, who was in a band called Steeler, which was Yngwie Malmsteen and Ron Keel's first band.
Right.
And Rick was also in the early formation days of Wasp before Chris Holmes got involved in the band, as a matter of fact. And so Rick and I had performed together at the Viper Room, and we became really good friends after we met each other at the NAMM convention in Anaheim, mainly because we had like a couple of mutual friends and all that. So that's how it happened. And he had posted a social media post saying, who can play these AC/DC songs, trying to get a band together for a benefit show at the Viper Room. And I was like one of the first people to raise my hand. And I messaged him, and he messaged me and said, Ed, are you sure you can play these songs? I'm like, 100%. I was actually in an AC/DC tribute band at the age of 12 years old. He's like, okay, let's do this then. So what happened was we became really good friends after we did that show together. And, I met his wife, who unfortunately passed away almost a year ago, Tamara Fox. And both Rick and Tamara became very much like the uncle and aunt that I never had in life. So they became very much like family. So Rick and I remember I forgot where we had this conversation at. Like, it was in person. I don't know if it was on phone or in person. Like, he probably would remember, if anything. But I remember I think I had vented out to him, like saying, like, a lot of these people that had never acknowledged me or gave me the time of the day. Now all of a sudden they want something from me. They want a piece of the action and all that. And the one thing he said to me was this: when people see that you're doing well in life and they see that you're making something of yourself, they're going to have a dangerous attraction to you, like a moth to the flame. And I looked right at him and I said, Rick, we need to write about that. And that was how it all started.
Yeah.
And so I kind of gave him ideas of the concept and all that. He's actually the one that helped write the lyrics to it.
Okay.
He was like best with that. And he helped write the lyrics to that. And like, he like was able to like put everything all together. And I looked at it, I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is perfect. It's such a great concept that I bet so many people can relate with. So, and then we worked on the musical parts together too. We were getting together at his house and like going over it. And then by the summertime, I think was when July 2018 was when we finally got down to recording the track. Even though I didn't release it for 3 years, I just had it shelved for so long. And because I was wanting to like record more and like do other stuff, because Derek and Nick weren't in the band at the time I had recorded until like later in the year, in late 2018, they became my bandmates. So I didn't know if I wanted to re-record it or like bringing Rick back to like re-record his bass and all that. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know. I don't want to go through all that hell. And then the pandemic hit and I just kept waiting to release it and all that. But I thought to myself, you know what? This year I'm going to finally just, even if it's just a few songs, release an EP of it. So we finally got it out. And I really have to thank Rick for that. And what was so funny with Rick is Rick appears in that heavy metal documentary, Decline of Western Civilization 2.
Yeah.
And I remember one thing, I watched it when I was like maybe 12 or 13. And, in my youth, I didn't have many friends in my youth. Obviously I dealt with a lot, like in my youth, like, one of those contributions, being my parents' divorce, which was very ugly. There's a very ugly truth behind it, which I'll eventually put in my book.
Mm,
But it led to me like losing a lot of friends,
right.
unfortunately, something that wasn't in my control. Like my life in my youth, long story short, I got pretty much robbed of my youth, especially my teen years,
Right.
like because of a lot of what happened. But so I remember it's so crazy how this happened. I watched this documentary on VH1 Classic, and when VH1 Classic was still around before it turned into MTV Classic. And I remember the one question that a lot of these musicians got asked were, "What if you don't make it?" And I remember the one that stuck out to me the most was the quote, "That question is out of my mind. The minute you doubt is the minute you lose it." And that was Rick.
Mm,
And ironically enough, I met Rick years later, when I at NAM, and it was crazy because he also knew another musician friend of mine, a guy named John Alton, who did music for the Sleepaway Camp movies.
okay.
And and then like I remember when I then put the two and two together, Rick being in Steeler, working with Ingve and Ron Keel, and then also being in the early days of Wasp, and I was already a huge Wasp fan. And then also seeing a picture of him in Decline of Western Civilization, I actually then had said to him, I'm like, Rick, I want to tell you something. I saw you as a little kid when I was 12 on VH1 Classic, and what you said stood out to me the most, and I have to thank you for that. And it's just I've been so blessed with everybody I've worked with, whether if it's in music, film, or even in the martial arts world, everybody I've gotten to work with or even meet, like martial arts names like Benny the Jet Urquidez or Don the Dragon Wilson, who worked in a lot of movies back then.
Uh,
Benny worked with Patrick Swayze for Roadhouse. He trained him for Roadhouse. Don Wilson was a pro kickboxing champion turned actor. He did Batman Forever
uh,
and a lot of other stuff. And then another guy I met named Danny Lopez. He did stunts for like Mortal Kombat, Minority Report. And then I also worked with another guy, Patrick Kilpatrick. He was the villain in one of Jean-Claude Van Damme's movies, Death Warrant. He was also a villain in Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then he was also in Minority Report with Tom Cruise too, which was a Spielberg movie. So, I could go on and on about everything I've done and worked with. It's like I've been so blessed with everybody I've met, worked with, or even just been in the same room with on that matter.
wow.
But yeah,
That's cool. I'm glad, like, because I don't want to go into the whole story about because if you put that the book, then nobody's gonna want to read the book. But
yeah,
it's, yeah, I'm glad to hear that your life has gotten so much better since that time, and that's great. And like you
yeah,
say, there's always even if something does bad happen, there is always gonna, well, usually for most people, it does get better somewhere down the line, and you're proof of that. So
yeah. And I mean, I was a victim of bullying in my youth. I was dealing with a bad home, like a really rough home life with it as it is. I mean, long story short, I mean, I kind of have been vocal about it to the public, but I had a very abusive mother figure in my life.
mm,
And that's all I'll say. Like the rest of the details I'll probably put in the book. But anyways, it's like when you have one of your parental figures doing things like that to you, especially in your youth, it really affects your upbringing. And it's very important and crucial for a child to have a really good upbringing. But when I've told people like the details behind it, it shocks them to the point where they're like, dude, how, like, it's amazing you are where you are today despite all this happening.
yeah.
And
Some people don't make it that far, especially
some
stuff
people
like that. So
some people don't have the strength to do it, but that's why I'm one of those people. I try to empower people that go through these kinds of things, whether if it's bullying or abuse at home or anything on that matter. But in the end of the days, we're not victims, we're survivors, and we're stronger from what we've dealt with.
yeah,
And I've participated in anti-bullying organizations as well because I'm an advocate for standing against bullying.
mm,
And I remember, and even like people, I've even had to deal with a psychotic stalker too, which is
really,
even more bizarre. Yeah, and it's like it's like this guy is like a full grown adult, like, and this guy was like slandering me on the internet, making up some of the most absurd claims about me that like, like making like, like homophobic slurs about me that weren't even true. And it's like, are you serious, dude? It's
Mm.
like, this guy's pushing 30. He lives at home with his parents and he's doing things like this. It's like, why are you doing this? Like, what? It's like, it's one of those things, I try to feel bad for these people, but I can't. I just pity them because it's like, they choose to be like this. And it's like, instead of turning your negatives into a positive, you do things like this. And it's like, I can't comprehend with it. And that's why, I support people that, are victims of, abuse, victims of bullying, or even victims of stalkers on that matter. Because, even my agent was, putting out to all of his clients, if you're dealing with a stalker, you need to let me know immediately and get it taken care of. Because like there's even like I've even like there's even like I think a couple of my agent's clients, they were dealing with people that were even getting followed to their car by psychotic fans.
Wow.
And it's bizarre. It's a very fucked up world out there. But long story short, I mean, I've always been one of those people. I try to empower people because when I see people going through things like this, it reminds me of me. And I don't like seeing people going through these things because it's like a constant reminder, and it takes me back to what I had to deal with. So that's why I try to empower people through these things,
Yeah.
especially our youth too.
Yeah, it's tough. I have a 6-year-old, and that was my niece that went by screaming before.
Oh, really?
But yeah, so I worry about them too because and I know my parents were always worried about me too when I was growing up because of just how the world is, and I'm worried about him too. But hopefully, me and my wife, we teach him the right ways of things to do and what not to do, and hopefully everything's all right. But
Absolutely.
you never know. I mean, I was picked on when I was a kid too, so you never know.
Yeah, and what's even more baffling is me being a musician, I feel like I have to put it out there is because when I first got involved in the music scene, I thought that this was like a haven for metalheads, for people to come together and for the mutual interests. And I definitely was wrong about that because eventually I started dealing with bullying in the scene.
Yeah, there's
And it's
some
like
jerks out there.
it's like why? It's like we all have the same interests. We're all here for the same purpose. It's like
Yeah.
what's the point behind all of it?
Yeah, you think so, but there's always those elitists out there that
Oh, absolutely, they're the worst. And it's funny because I remember one of my friends has gone on to become the bassist of Nile. And I remember that he's even told me that there's people that are waiting to see him stumble and fall. And I say to him, dude, his name's Julian. I've said to him, dude, you've got an awesome thing going for you, man. And dude, you've earned it. I mean, and honestly, this guy, like, he was working at Guitar Center and selling me gear when I was living in Florida. And now to see him with like a really well-known band, he's earned it. He's earned for sure. And when I see good things happening to good people, it makes me very happy. And like when I see people that have worked so hard to get to where they are, it inspires me. Whereas like some people, they get jealous. There's people just jealous. They have this mentality where they're like, oh, why does he have this? Why does he have that? He's not deserving of that. It's like, well, it's because they've worked for it.
Exactly.
They've worked their asses off for it because they've had that ambition for it. It's like maybe rather than being jealous about it, if you're not happy with the way things are in your life, make a difference.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people don't understand that, and they just like to be, the asshole they are. But
yeah, exactly.
One day they'll grow up. But yeah. But do you have any music being worked on now that'll be coming out this year or next year, or what's going on with the music?
So I'm trying to like get into back into the writing mode and all that. But like I've just been so tied up lately with other things, but like I've got like some songwriting ideas, and all that. I don't want to like I don't even want to spoil the concepts behind them, of course, there's always gonna be somebody out there that's gonna take that idea and all. But I've got some ideas up my sleeve, and I mean I've still got Derek and Nick on board for it. I've got some new equipment and all that where I can record at home, for the demos and all that, and everybody can record wherever they are. I do want to have John Gallagher involved in future recordings when he's not touring with Raven and not recording with Raven too. And John and I, since we're really good friends, I think would be willing to do it. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'd say as of right now, I'm in the writing stages. When we're going to record, I guess, is to be determined. But I've got something great going, both in music, film, and martial arts as of currently. So I'm really happy with where life is heading.
All right, cool. You're very busy then.
Try to be.
That's the way to. That's the way to be. So where can people go to find your music? Do you have a website, social media?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I would say Facebook. Like, let me look at my my handle real quick. Because I can never remember the handle on Facebook.
Nobody does, because it's always somebody's always taking it, and then you got to put like a medal or like band or like one or whatever at something stupid.
So on Facebook, I have a Facebook page, facebook.com/Ed Gage, actor, musician. Or you can find me on my profile. I mean, I'm close to the 5,000 limit, which sucks because every time I've got to bump off inactive profiles or people that are no longer in touch with me.
Yeah, you'll have to make a second profile.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got the public page too, where people can go and follow it, like it. So I've got that still. And then I'm on Instagram at Mr. Ed Gage, Mr.Ed_Gage. I know it's complicated, but if you type in Ed Gage, you'll know who I am.
You'll be there.
You'll see me. It's hard to miss me. And then I'm also on Twitter at Mr. Ed Gage. I'm also on Spotify. I'm on Apple Music, Amazon. I'm on a lot of the streaming services and all that. I'm on Bandcamp as well, edgage.bandcamp.com. And and then even on IMDb, if you want to see my past film work, I'm on IMDb as well. Oh. So I try to be no pun intended, everything everywhere all at once.
That's the way to be. I mean, you're between being in the music scene and then also with the acting scene, you got to do everything and be everywhere. Yeah. So absolutely. So everybody, please go check out Ed Gage. Go check out his music and go watch some of the shows that he's been in. And thank you very much for coming on the show. I had a lot of fun talking to you. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And next thing that I put out, hopefully I'll be back on here. All right, great. Sounds good. And everybody, please hit subscribe. Go to ratsaladreview.com, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
For all hard rock, heavy metal bands needing worldwide exposure at affordable prices, Online Metal Promo PR is taking bands from the underground to above ground. Visit their official website at onlinemetalpromo.net. onlinemetalpromo.net.